Welcome to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery starring Jerry Springer, along with Gene Galvin and me. I'm Megan Hills. We're recorded live in front of a brilliant studio audience at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky.
My daddy came home.
Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Jerry Springer.
Whoa!
Thank you. Thank you. We have a studio audience, small studio audience. This Folk School Coffee Parlor is a little place, but tonight we are packed with people, and we've brought in extra
Easy.
chairs.
Whoa.
I know,
Back.
the people are
Please
pushing
back
out.
away from the table.
Jerry gets a little frightened when he sees people start to push up.
Man.
And by the way, we've got Tim Lancaster coming up. He was on last week, and we beseeched him to come back another week.
Yeah.
And Tim was born and raised in Orlando, Florida, and then he's done a lot of stuff. He's been on trail crews up in northeastern United States. But a few years ago, did an artist in residency at Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, which is it's a historical hotbed for lots of stuff. So he did some songs when he was an artist in residence there. He's going to come on and do one of those, do a couple songs for us, actually. Wanted to update you on something, Jerry, and I have kind of an angle here. I'm just going to tell it straight. I've been bitching at you that you don't do anything remarkable. You have made money. Come on, I'll give you your
Couldn't you
props.
have told me earlier? I'm approaching 75. Now you told me I haven't.
And you were mayor of Cincinnati, and that's not a small thing.
But it's obviously not remarkable.
Not enough. You were number one news anchor in Cincinnati for years. You had the Jerry Springer Show. You've done a lot of political work. But there are people out there, and I have brought some on the show to try to show you role models. A guy that's riding a bike to Argentina, started in Quebec, and he's heading for the tip of the end of the earth, Tierra del Fuego, the end of the earth. The guy that ran the Appalachian Trail in about a month, and usually it takes 6 months to do it. Yeah. Then I had a guy on, you interviewed him, good interview. I wouldn't say it was remarkable, but it was a good interview, just a solid interview.
Yeah.
No, it was a damn good interview. With a guy named Bryce Carlson. So Bryce is rowing across the North Atlantic Sea. It's 2,000 miles. He left St. John's, Newfoundland, and the world record. He's the first American that, if he accomplishes it, who will ever have done it. No American has ever rowed alone, unsupported, 20-foot rowboat from St. John's, Newfoundland to Penzance, England. You probably have been to Penzance, England. You were born and raised in England.
And there's not a town in England I haven't been to.
I know, but it's on the western coast of England.
Yeah, western coast,
nearest point. Yeah. So 2,000 miles.
Yes.
The guy has been rolled over in big seas probably 20 times. He's lost 2 sea anchors. He lost his dagger board. The other day, I've been following him. You can follow him at brycerose.com or on Facebook. Bryce Carlson, athlete is his Facebook name.
Yeah.
Or Twitter. He's on Twitter as well. So I've been following him. See, the other day, he lost the antenna for his GPS and his radio communication. And then he fixed it. I mean, he's been in all these storms, including the remnants of Hurricane Chris, I guess.
Yes.
He is 4 days from now coming into Penzance, England. He is setting the world record. He's going to be the first American to do this, and he's breaking the world record for crossing the ocean from St. John's to Penzance.
And no one's been going with him?
Nobody. Out there alone. So I followed him.
Well, here's my question.
Yes.
How do you know he really did it?
You are a son of a beach that you would. Hey,
well,
Jerry,
this could be like, what was
Jerry.
it, Rosie Ruiz with the marathon?
Hey, Jerry.
He flew
Roll
over.
with me here. I got an idea. I'm with you. I got an idea. By the way, he sent
Rowed across the Atlantic.
I know.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And I swam it.
Yeah. So he sent a Twitter message to the Visitors Bureau of Penzance, England this morning.
Yeah.
And you can see it on his Twitter account. And it says, "Hello, Penzance. I will be coming into your harbor in about 4 days. And I'm looking for a great place." Yeah, right. I'm looking for a great place to have a celebratory beer. He's now communicating with the Visitors Bureau.
Yeah,
So I got this idea, and he's going to beat the record by, I don't know, probably 4 days. So I got this idea. Well, why don't you and I put out a news release? I'll do it. I know how to write a news release. I'll put out a news release saying that Bryce Carlson, Jerry Springer, and Gene Galvin just rode across the North Atlantic.
Oh, we're going to put that we did it as
Yes! Jumpstart him. Get ahead of him. Preempt him.
Yeah, but we're coming in first.
Yeah, well, we got to start doing national interviews.
There's some guy following us.
Well, we can claim that was him.
Yeah, that must have been him. There was a guy about a mile or two behind us. With
us,
binoculars, I could see him. And he was just...
We need to get on the Today Show, the Howard Stern Show, local radio, because I have not been able to get you. The thing I've asked you to do, I'm going to do it one last time, then I'm going to stop beating this dead horse.
Yeah.
For the love of God, join me and Greg Schran, AskTheLifeguard.com, Dr. Greg Schran. He requires you always calling
You
doctor.
are a regular billboard.
Why in the hell aren't we renting an Avis rent-a-car 1 week with unlimited mileage and set the Guinness Book of Record for how many miles you can put on an unlimited mile rental car in a week? Why the hell won't you do that? Just freaking drive around the country. That's a lot easier than getting in the middle of the damn North Atlantic. You won't even do that.
Right. I'll do neither. One will kill me and the other will bore me to death.
Bore you to death. That's a good point.
Why would we
The
do
other
that?
day, my wife came into Folk School Coffee Parlor, and we live literally within walking distance of here. So to walk here takes, 15, 20 minutes. A good kind of exercise. So my wife came in here. I wasn't here, and then she came home, and I saw her when she got home, and I said, "Where'd you go?" I was down at Folk School. I had a great iced coffee.
Oh, is that what she told you?
Yeah, that's right. So she says,
she was here. Yeah, she was at the.
Yeah. So I had a great iced coffee, and I said, "Well, you don't carry any wallet or anything when you go out, taking a hike." And she said, "I just put it on your tab." I said, "I don't have a tab at Folk School Coffee Parlor.
No,
I don't have a tab."
No, they wouldn't trust it.
So she walks out putting it on my tab, and Catfish, who was the owner and a city council member, calls the police. They turned me in
because you didn't
for stealing a coffee.
Well, I think that's right. Good job, Catfish. That's why we voted you in. Stop people like this. This is how it starts.
Son of a...
Today it's a cup of coffee. Tomorrow...
Yeah.
Nothing.
Nothing.
I got
Tomorrow,
nothing.
tomorrow it's
I
one of the
nothing.
guitars leaning against the wall.
Well, sure. Yeah.
Anyway, so...
See, I don't think I ever stole anything. You confess to having...
Yeah, I have. Well, I'm not...
I mean, as a kid, Yeah.
I
honestly don't think I ever did.
I'm not surprised. You were.
I
I
was
didn't
a
know
pansy.
you in like high school. I didn't know you in college.
I was
met
pretty
you
much
after
of a
college.
pansy.
Well, you were very Catholic-like. You were Jewish, but you were very Catholic-like. Very Catholic-like.
Yeah.
By the way,
That is a
give
Jew who
props.
eats bacon.
That's right. We do need to give props to Bryce Carlson for what he is about.
That is
to accomplish.
remarkable. I'm making jokes, but that's remarkable. We had his lovely girlfriend here.
And I
weeks
believe, I
ago.
don't know this, but I'm betting she's part of the small crew, maybe his parents as well, who are, in fact, they said today, they didn't name them, but they said today in his Facebook, Twitter, and blog posts on those three media that I just described, that his welcome crew is now en route to England. So they will be there. And by the way, give props to WOW Airlines, WOW, WOW Airlines. They're out of Reykjavik, Iceland.
Yeah.
They now have donated to fly him back to the U.S. from England.
Oh,
that's very cool.
Very nice. Two seats.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
how does that airline stay afloat?
I don't know.
You mean 2 seats?
Oh no, WOW Airlines, very, very
wow.
cool.
That is nice. But
It is.
here's what I tend to be cynical.
Right. Yes.
And I'm thinking, when I met his lovely girlfriend, she was here at the,
a physician at Children's Hospital in Cincinnati.
Now, a guy, and they had been going together 2 years.
Is that right? Okay.
Right. Still not married.
Right. Oh, okay. You're going to make an issue out of that. Go ahead.
Well, you wonder.
Yeah.
And a guy says to his girlfriend, "Honey, I've heard all kinds of excuses to get away.
Yeah.
Honey, I'm going to row to England.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 2 months."
Yeah, I'll call you as soon as I get there.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, he's been in touch. They've been in touch, I'm sure.
Of
daily,
course you call.
Not multiple. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Why not call?
Yeah.
Honey, it's really rough out here. You're splashing the bathtub water.
No, there is a organization, I read this today too,
Yeah.
that is required to verify that he did it. And that's the truth. Because he is going to set the record, and he's going to beat it by days.
It's a phenomenal story. It's a phenomenal achievement. And he's a teacher in a local school here in
and
Cincinnati.
he's gathering lots of data, Seven Hill schools.
Who doesn't want to be in
lots
his
of
class
data.
now
I'm
just to
telling
hear
you,
those
man.
stories?
I'm telling you, it's just really cool.
Good for him.
And we're hoping that we will have him over here someday off into the future. My guess is you're going to see him on the Today Show, nighttime entertainment shows, lots of media, New York Times. He's going to be a big story because he's the first American to ever.
I want to meet the pilot that flew him over.
Yeah, right. And by the way, Jerry's plane. I'm going to get the year right. You have a Gulfstream. We ask our mutual friend Lewis. It's in the audience. What year is his Gulfstream? Do you know? Yeah, 1940. 1940.
Yeah, but you get it, if you got to get behind it for the pushing.
Yeah.
If you get 2 or 3 guys to
spin
really
the propeller.
push it, it gets
What is the year, Lewis? Do you know?
It's a 2000, and it was discounted from 2008 to 2006.
What is it? 2006. It's a 2006, and you didn't make a note of that because we're putting it on our website with a photograph. A 2006 Gulfstream. The asking price, I'll tell you, we're trying to get $2 million.
Yeah.
But we'll take 1.8. Let's tell the truth. We'll take 1.8, won't we?
We'll take 1.8.
They said,
no,
Jersey.
we want 2.
Two.
Plus,
We want 2.
And then I stand with them when they buy it. I standing with
get
them.
a
They
pic?
take pictures.
Get
They take a
pictures.
selfie.
A selfie.
They get a selfie.
They
get the
he'll
Too Hot for
sign
TV
the
tapes
portalette
from my
that's in
show.
there. You'll get some. What they
Throw
call
that
those-
in there.
What they call
Too
those?
Hot for TV.
Too hot for TV. He's going to throw
Those
Too Hot for TV.
VHS.
Hey, we'll throw in.
tapes.
We'll throw in the How to
They
Dance.
went for $9.98.
Yeah. We'll
Around
throw in that
Christmas.
country western.
Oh, my CD.
Actually,
my
we got a
country
whole
western.
package.
You get a whole
We
Jerry
can put
Springer
in there.
paraphernalia.
A T-shirt.
A T-shirt.
Yeah.
The
From-
security. Springer
We'll
security.
get a Jerry Springer security.
Oh,
shirt.
man.
Oh, it's gonna be
Why
big.
wouldn't you want to buy this
We're not
Gulfstream?
going down from $2 million. We're not. We're not
No,
going down to
well,
1.8.
not now that you're throwing the
No,
Too Hot for
2
TV tape in. No.
$2 million.
I'll
It's
tell you
on-
what. Let's sell the Too Hot for TV and throw in the plane.
The plane, yes.
As the option.
Okay, we do have a 2006 Gulfstream. It is going to be on Craigslist, Cincinnati Craigslist tomorrow. It's going to be on at jerryspringer.com. Might even put it on Facebook. We have Bree Long here, our social media coordinator.
People are going to be wanting
Maybe
this
Bree will
plane.
get it up on, get it
Yeah,
everywhere.
you can take it for a test run.
Yeah.
We
And when
prefer
they
people
call-
to have a pilot's license,
and
but otherwise.
I need a phone number. I'll just put your cell number, right?
Yeah,
right?
and just leave a message on my voicemail that doesn't exist.
Yeah, right. So anyway, hey,
Yeah.
Jerry, I wanted to ask you this. We got Tim Lancaster coming up. Stick around for that, everybody. But this Russian controversy, so the Paul Manafort case, as we are recording this show, just started. They sat the jury.
Right.
They had opening statements. So that's not related to Russia, by the way. Let's make that clear.
Right,
That
the first case isn't.
not related to Russia. But there's so much stuff going on about Russian, and is there obstruction of justice, and is there, collusion would be the armchair name, but it's really more technical than that in the courts of law. If this controversy really gets legal legs, is this treason? Has Donald Trump committed treason?
Well, the quick answer is no. And let me kind of explain it this way. This past weekend, Saturday night, Mickey and I are having dinner at home, and then we turned on the TV, I guess it was around 10 o'clock at night, and we saw the movie from 30 years ago, All the President's Men.
Yeah.
I think it was playing on MSNBC, so we just watched it again.
Yeah, I did too. Same night. Yeah.
And watching the whole Watergate thing with Nixon and the Washington Post and how Woodward and Bernstein got that story, you can't help watching it and starting to make parallels, Nixon and Trump. And now when you look back at all that Watergate thing, the whole event and all the things around it, it starts putting some things really into perspective. Among the questions, why did Nixon ever do that? Why was there break-in at the Democratic headquarters? Why did he create this plumbers group? That was the name they gave it, which was a group that would do initially not supposedly illegal things, but they would do dirty tricks in his re-election in 1972 against McGovern. They didn't want to run against Humphrey. They thought he'd be Muskie. They thought Muskie would be the toughest candidate, so they did some dirty tricks, put out some false stories about Muskie, and Muskie was defeated badly in the primaries, dropped out, and so they got to run against McGovern, which is what they wanted. But anyway, the crimes that Nixon was ultimately forced out of office for had to do with obstruction of justice, and the tapes revealed everything that he was doing, the crooked activity he was doing, how he was violating some parts of the Constitution. But he wasn't at that point charged, or the threat wasn't that he would be charged for treason, because all the things he was doing, he was just a crook, or he was doing things to get out of trouble himself. In later years, we found out through the tapes of Lyndon Johnson, because Johnson always taped in the White House, we found out what Nixon was really afraid of and what all these activities were about. And it was this. In 1968, Nixon is running against Humphrey for president. We went through that horrible year with the assassination of Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, the riots in the cities, the Democratic Convention in Chicago, which blew up into a riot. Nixon is then nominated. Democrats that were for McCarthy and Kennedy, they're just pulling out of it. They don't want to get involved at all. Humphrey was vice president. He was supporting Johnson with the war. So all these anti-war protesters, young people like ourselves, we didn't want Humphrey, we didn't want Nixon either, but we just kind of dropped out. So as they went into September, it looked like Nixon was going to slaughter Humphrey in the 68 election. But all of a sudden, the Democrats started to come home because they started to think we can't really have Nixon, and Humphrey started gaining in the polls. About 2 weeks prior to the election, word gets out, or Johnson makes an offer for he will agree to stop the bombing of North Vietnam if they will accept, and he's willing to have peace talks. And Nixon correctly saw that, oh my gosh, if Johnson stops the bombing right before the election, that would be the main issue that is keeping Democrats divided. The Democrats really would then come home thinking, oh my gosh, Johnson, and then Humphrey, who would take over for Johnson. Let's get Humphrey in there because Humphrey is more likely to bring peace than Nixon would. So Nixon knew that if they do the bombing halt right before the election, he's screwed. He's going to lose in a tight election just like he did in 1960. So this is what he does. He has a connection, and I spoke about this one once before on these podcasts, but he has a connection with this Madame Chenault. She was called the Dragon Lady. She was a Chinese woman who had been the wife of a general, an American general during World War II who was a hero. And she was now a widow, but she was very close with the president of South Vietnam. And Nixon got to her and said, would you please tell the President Thieu of South Vietnam not to agree to go to the peace talks that Johnson just proposed, because if you can if he can hold out until after the election, I'll be elected, I being Nixon, and I'm going to be much tougher and much more on your side in whatever peace treaty is negotiated. I'll back your interests, South Vietnam, much more than Humphrey and Johnson will, because they want peace at any price. They're just trying to get out of this thing. So you want me as president, not Humphrey. You'll get a better deal, because Humphrey will give away the store to North Vietnam just to stop the war. So Chennault says this to Thieu, the head of South Vietnam, and sure enough, even though the headlines were Johnson proposing a bombing halt, and it looks like Humphrey has now literally almost tied Nixon in the polls, 2 days or 3 days before the election, the president of South Vietnam says he's not going to peace talks just yet. And all of a sudden, the air was out of that balloon. They weren't going to have the peace talks. And President Johnson gets word of this. He calls the head of the Republican leader of the Senate, Senator from Illinois, Everett Dirksen, and he tells Dirksen, you tell Nixon, I know what he's up to, I know what he did, and this is treason. And he better stop, because it wasn't complete yet, he better stop doing what he's doing or I'm blowing the whistle. And then Nixon said, I swear I didn't do it, I promise I didn't, I'll back you on whatever you do with the war. So Nixon lied. Johnson didn't say anything, probably for the same reason that Barack Obama didn't say anything right before the last election with Hillary, even though he had heard about what the Russians were doing. Because if you suddenly announce it a week before the election, you're going to create chaos. No one will believe the results of the election. And that's a big responsibility for any president to take when you don't know what's going to happen because of it. So Johnson didn't say anything about it. And as you know, Nixon won. Until the day Johnson died, Nixon was always afraid that Johnson would blow the whistle or word would come out of what he did, because the break-in at the headquarters was nothing compared to treason. And that was the thing that would get Nixon sent to prison for life. There'd be no pardon for treason. That's what he was most scared about. Once Nixon created the Plumbers Group, which was about 1971, to start trying to win the next election, there was also the Pentagon Papers, released by a guy who worked in the Pentagon, Daniel Ellsberg. The Pentagon Papers were literally thousands of pages of a report on everything our government knew about the war in Vietnam with President Kennedy and President Johnson. It stopped, the report stopped on the day that Johnson was no longer president. So it was all the history of the Vietnam War, and maybe lies that we told, all those things. If you think about it, Nixon fought like hell to get Daniel Ellsberg and to stop and to sue the New York Times to prevent the Pentagon Papers from being published. Interestingly enough, even though it was about Johnson and Kennedy, neither of them protested. It was Nixon that was protesting the release of the Pentagon Papers. So then the question is, why was Nixon so upset about it? Because from a distance, it would look like, oh, it's going to make him look good. Can't blame Nixon for the Vietnam War. It was all Kennedy and Johnson. What he was panicked about is that if Ellsberg talked, or if it was in the Pentagon Papers, they would find out what Nixon had done. He didn't know if that was going to be in the report. Therefore, you had the break-in of the psychiatrist's office of Daniel Ellsberg. They were panicked. Nixon was panicked. He was trying to get anything he could to stop this in case it had that information in there. No one working for Nixon except Haldeman knew about any of this. So the rest of the Watergate people, they weren't involved in that. So everyone's scratching their heads. Why was Nixon so obsessed with all this stuff, whether it was the Pentagon paper? Why did you have the break-in of the headquarters? All this stuff. Nixon lived with this every day and was afraid Johnson would spill this right before the 72 election. He didn't. And ironically, 2 days after after Nixon was sworn in the second term, in January of 73, 2 days later, Johnson died. And that was what Richard Nixon lived with for much of the rest of his life, worrying it would one day come out. It came out after Nixon died, and we only know about it because Lyndon Johnson taped his office, the Oval Office, and his phone calls, just like Nixon did. And Johnson had it all the time. And so when you can get Johnson's tapes now, you know, there's even, I have a book on some of his tapes, but you can go to, I guess, get it on the internet or whatever. But you can listen to it. So it was Johnson's tapes, his recordings, where this whole story came out. Now, why is that? That could have been treason. Why was that treason? The Constitution in Article 3, section, it escapes me right now, but in Article 3 of the Constitution, it's very specific about what treason is. It has to be working against our government in a declared war. We were at war in Vietnam, or even if it's not declared, in what an obvious shooting war. So we were at war in Vietnam, so an argument would clearly be made, whether Congress declared the war or not, that this was treason, because by that activity, by not having the peace talks then and extending the war another 4 years, 30,000 more Americans got killed? I mean, how many more people died because Nixon interfered with the peace talks and stopped it from happening? With Trump, we're not at war with Russia. Clearly, there was a cyber attack, but it's not a war. And you know, we have peace treaties with Russia. We have nuclear treaties with Russia. So it wouldn't meet that standard. You can get Trump on other things, but you can't get him on treason.
Good analysis. All right, we want to bring back, again, he was actually here last week, and we got him to lay over and come back again. Tim Lancaster from Huntington, West Virginia, born and raised in Orlando, Florida.
Did you bring the bones this time?
And
no, he played, for those who didn't hear the one from last week, he
played, yeah.
He played bones, which it sounds, I mean, if you're just listening to the podcast, it sounded like what, castanets?
Right, they're just
they're actually, some people will even call them cowboy castanets.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they were, in fact, Tim, when you did that on last week's podcast, were they elk bones or moose bones? What were they?
They were moose bones. They look like moose bones to me.
In my left hand, it was Jerry's a bone expert. In my left hand, those were moose ribs, and then in my right hand, those were cattle.
All right.
Oh.
Well, it was very, very cool. And he did a song that he wrote while doing his artist in residency at Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And in fact, we were so impressed with it. And he's going to do another song from that same artist in residence. And we wish that other artists in residence, because I think, Tim, you mentioned that the national parks have a pretty rich program. So one assumes that
Many
maybe
of them do, yeah.
Yellowstone might have this, Glacier National Park, maybe Great
Absolutely.
Smoky
I
Mountains.
think Glacier does it. I think Joshua Tree. I'd love to go to
Joshua Tree.
It's
I've
one of
been
my
to
favorites.
Joshua Tree backpacking. It's an amazing place. So anyway, any artist in residence who may be hearing these podcasts, get in touch with us, either me or Casey Campbell, Gene at jerryspringer.com. Casey, is it Casey at jerryspringer.com?
It is.
Casey at jerryspringer.com. Make contact with us because we love this national park program. And real fast, Tim, your latest album is what? Give us a name.
Stones, Rivers, and Trains.
All right, and people can hear you, Tim Lancaster, at Spotify and all sorts of
Yeah,
platforms.
on Spotify and Facebook.
Facebook presence.
TimLancaster.bandcamp.com. I think that's about
Okay.
all
And do a song, if you would, please. Tim Lancaster.
All right, this is called Tomahawk Pipe. Sailed out west to see what I could see. Brought along a gift that was fit for a chief. Something he could use to chop his log and smoke his leaf. It's a pipe, it's a tomahawk, tomahawk pipe. Floating down the water that was named the Misery, we crossed into the land of the Sioux Territory. I offered them my gift, they said to please make it brief. It's a pipe, it's a tomahawk, tomahawk pipe. All that wood ain't gonna split itself, and tobacco's good for your health. Slam it down, light it up, we love to wish you well. We all shook hands, then gathered for a feast, then gathered up some branch to burn to share a story. When it's time to cut the kindling, I know just what you need. The fire caught a spark and we circled all around. Thought it nice to have a puff to wash the meal down. Then out from my back I said, hey, look what I found. It's a pipe, it's a tomahawk, tomahawk pipe. All that wood ain't gonna split itself, and tobacco's good for your health. Slam it down, light it up, we love to wish you well. Well, it's nice to meet your friends, but it's time we move along. I hope you find some use for the tool that built this song. Just don't forget that time when we turned two things into one. It's a pipe, it's a tomahawk, tomahawk pipe, pipe. Tomahawk, tomahawk pipe, it's a pipe, it's a tomahawk, tomahawk pipe.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Tim Lancaster, Huntington, West Virginia. Hey, Tim, are you, did you tour around Midwest, Eastern? What's your kind of route of where people
Pretty
can
much
hear you?
this region right here, like Huntington, Cincinnati, Lexington, work those three
And if
markets.
people want to hear you locally, do you have any, would Facebook be a good place where you're making announcements where you might be performing?
Yeah, I need to get better at that, but yeah.
Okay.
That'd be the spot.
I hear you. I hear you. So you got an album out. People can get that. You reference that. We love your music. Love the stuff you're doing. You know, creative. It's really cool to see younger singer-songwriters writing music that's about today's stuff. That's in the style of older, old-timey Americana style, and you got it.
Back in Gene's era.
Yeah, right. By the way, what influenced you to do this kind of style?
That guy at the top, right there,
Right,
that's
he's-
Doc Watson right there, and then John
He's-
Hartford's my
He's
personal
pointing to
favorite
some
there.
graphics, and again, our listening audience can't see this, but we got graphics behind us at the Folk School Coffee Parlor. Name those influences again.
Doc Watson,
Doc
blind
Watson.
guitar player from Deep Gap, North Carolina.
Yep.
And then John Hartford there,
Yeah.
bought a multi-instrumentalist
Yeah,
from.
and John Hartford's a banjo
City.
guy and
Yeah.
real Americana singer-songwriter.
These pictures of war, I always thought the people were looking at me up here. They were looking at those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Doc's blind.
By the
so-
way, one of the backdrops behind the table where we perform are some really just cool graphics, good old time photographs of some key people from the roots music scene. Do us a favor, take us out on Down by the Riverside, and Jerry Springer will join you if you'll allow it on the second verse.
I want someone to say no.
Yes, somebody first times it.
I can't allow it. I'm sorry.
Gonna lay down my heavy load down
By the riverside,
down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my heavy load
down by the riverside, study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more.
Jerry Springer.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Whoa! Y'all come back now, you hear?